Have you ever considered the cost of a mistake in your job? Could be a few dollars, perhaps some hours of rework. But what if I told you there are professions here in the United States where a single error can literally cost millions? Where a wrong decision made in mere fractions of a second can dismantle entire companies, ruin lives, or even jeopardize national security. Today, I'm going to introduce you to a world that few know. A realm where the pressure is so overwhelming that some individuals can barely sleep at night. Every move is calculated, each word is weighed, and the stakes of failure are so high that only the best of the best can endure. And what's even more intriguing, these individuals are compensated precisely for this burden, for carrying that weight on their shoulders, for being capable of making decisions that you and I could hardly fathom. Get ready, because what you're about to learn in the next few minutes might completely alter your perception of the American job market. It may even inspire you to pursue a path you've never considered before. Or, at the very least, it will make you grateful not to face the pressure these people deal with every day. Let's embark on this journey from the pinnacle of the hierarchy. And when I say pinnacle, I'm referring to individuals who earn more in a year than most do in a lifetime. Picture yourself seated in a conference room on the 47th floor of a skyscraper in Manhattan. The view is breathtaking, yet you can hardly glance out the window. Your focus is entirely on the rapidly shifting graphs on the screens before you. Red numbers, green numbers, billions of dollars exchanging hands every second. You are a derivative surgeon on Wall Street. And no, I'm not talking about medicine. I'm referring to one of the riskiest and highest paying professions in the United States. These professionals don't operate on hearts. They operate on global financial markets. A derivative surgeon at the largest American investment banks can earn between $850,000 and $4,200,000 annually. Some of the most successful even rake in $8 million or more when bonuses are generous. But that money doesn't come without a price. Every decision these individuals make involves sums that would make your head spin. They create, purchase, and sell complex financial instruments that can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. A miscalculation, a wrong interpretation of the market, a failure to anticipate an economic shift, and boom, vanish. I once met one of these professionals. He shared with me that he lost $12 million in a single trade because he misread a Chinese economic report. 12 million in just minutes. He told me that night was the worst of his life. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He lay staring at the ceiling of his apartment, wondering if he would be fired the next day. But do you know what happened? He wasn't fired. Why? Because the previous week, he had generated $47 million in profits for the bank. That's the game. You can make mistakes as long as you get it right far more often. The pressure is so intense that the burnout rate in this profession is alarming. Many can't last more than 5 years. Some experience panic attacks. Others develop ulcers. And there are those who simply give up and go plant organic crops somewhere in Oregon to regain their sanity. Yet while they're in the game, they live like kings. Apartments in Tribeca, summer homes in the Hamptons, cars that cost more than most houses. It's a lifestyle of extremes. Now, you might be thinking, sure, but at least these guys are dealing with other people's money, not human lives, right? Wrong. There exists a category of professionals where a single mistake does not just cost millions. It can cost lives. And yet, they are required to make decisions in mere fractions of a second. So, are you enjoying this deep dive into the world of high-risk, high-reward professions? If you want to keep uncovering the secrets of the American job market, subscribe now to the Salary Uncovered channel. And don't forget to share this video with that friend who's always complaining about their job. I'm guaranteed they'll think twice after this. Now, let's move on because the next professional I'm going to introduce earn salaries that will leave you stunned. Let's talk about neurosurgeons specializing in highly complex procedures. Specifically, those who operate on brain tumors located in critical areas of the brain. In the United States, these doctors earn between $680,000 and $1,800,000 per year. The most renowned ones, working at clinics like the Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins Hospital, can easily exceed $2,500,000 annually. But here's the catch. While a trader can lose millions and still get a second chance, A neurosurgeon does not have that luxury. When you're operating on someone's brain, every millimeter matters. A tremor in the hand, a slight distraction, or a cut just 1 millimeter off, and you could leave a patient paralyzed. Or worse. Once attended a lecture by a neurosurgeon. He displayed a photo from a surgery he performed. The tumor he needed to remove was literally entangled in the patient's vital blood vessels in the brain. He mentioned that the margin for error was 0.2 millimeters, less than 1/4 of a millimeter. Any mistake and the patient would die on the operating table. The surgery lasted 19 hours. 19 hours of absolute concentration. He told me he couldn't even blink incorrectly, that every breath had to be controlled. His assistants monitored his heart rate to ensure he remained calm. And do you know how much that surgery cost the hospital? Approximately $400,000. If he made a mistake, besides the human tragedy, there would be a lawsuit that could easily surpass $8 million in damages. Not to mention the damage to the hospitals and the doctor's reputation. That's why these professionals earn so much. They literally hold lives in their hands, and the cost of an error is immeasurable. But not all high-risk professions involve scalpels or financial grafts. Some involve secrets worth billions. Let me introduce you to the world of intellectual property lawyers specializing in cutting-edge technology patents. These professionals work for giants like Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Intel. Their job is to protect these companies' innovations. In the United States, a senior patent attorney working for one of these corporations earns between $420,000 and $950,000 per year. Partners at specialized law firms can easily make over $1,800,000. And the most esteemed? We've seen cases where they earn $3,500,000 annually. Why so much? Because a single mistake in drafting a patent can cost billions. Literally billions. Let me give you a real example. A few years ago, a tech company lost a patent dispute because the attorney who drafted the document used the word comprising instead of consisting of 2 words. The difference? $1.3 billion in losses for the company. Do you grasp the pressure? Every word crafted by these attorneys undergoes meticulous scrutiny, analysis, and study. Rival companies will enlist armies of lawyers to uncover loopholes, flaws, and ambiguities. Spoke with a patent attorney who was involved in a semiconductor technology case. She revealed that she spent 3 months refining just a single paragraph of the document. 3 months. Because that specific paragraph protected an innovation worth $4.7 billion to the company. What if she made a mistake? What if she left a gap? The company could lose not just the patent, but also years of research and development. Thousands of jobs could be at stake. Shareholders would suffer immense losses. She shared that she woke up in the early hours with panic, mentally reviewing every sentence she had written. She dreamt of commas and semicolons. She developed a nervous habit of checking everything 3 times, even when she was off the clock. But when the case was won, when the patent was granted without contest, she received a bonus of $890,000, nearly $1 million for 3 months of work. Because she saved billions. Now let's shift gears entirely. Let's discuss individuals you likely have never seen or met, yet who may be impacting your life right now. I'm referring to the architects of cybersecurity systems for critical infrastructure. These professionals safeguard power grids, water systems, hospitals, and banks. Everything that keeps society running. In the United States, a senior cybersecurity architect earns between $380,000 and $720,000 a year. Chief Information Security Officers, CISOs, at major corporations make between $550,000 and $1,400,000. And those working for national security agencies? The figures are confidential, but sources suggest they could reach $2 million when accounting for benefits and retention bonuses. Let me ask you something. Have you ever considered pursuing one of these careers? Or do you know someone working in one of these high-risk fields? Share in the comments which of these professions surprised you the most so far. Read all the comments and love hearing your thoughts. But back to our digital guardians. Why do they earn so much? Because a single error, one unpatched vulnerability, can cripple entire systems. Imagine the scenario. You're in charge of cybersecurity for a power grid serving 8 million people. It's summer. A heat wave is hitting. Everyone has their air conditioning cranked up. And suddenly, hackers exploit a vulnerability you should have detected. The grid fails. 8 million people are left without power. Hospitals resort to emergency generators. Traffic lights stop functioning. Chaos ensues. People die because medical equipment ceases to work. Others perish in traffic accidents. Food spoils in supermarkets. The cost easily exceeds $500 million on the first day alone. And who's to blame? You, the security architect who overlooked the flaw. Read about a similar situation that occurred on the East Coast a few years back. It wasn't a full-blown attack, but a partial blackout affecting 2 million people for 14 hours. The investigation revealed that the security lapse could have been avoided if the correct protocol had been in place. The responsible professional was fired. The company paid $127 million in compensation and fines, and that individual never found work in the field again. Their career was over. On the other hand, there are cybersecurity professionals who serve as anonymous heroes. They detect and neutralize hundreds of attacks daily. They work 80 hours a week during critical periods. They save companies from ransomware threats that could cost tens of millions. These experts exist in a state of constant vigilance. They understand that hackers are always active. Attacks can originate from anywhere in the world, at any moment. The next intrusion attempt could be taking place at this very second. This is why companies are willing to pay vast sums to secure the best talent. The cost of not having top-notch experts is simply unimaginable. However, not all high-risk professions involve technology or medicine. Some are surprisingly traditional. One of them might even shock you. Let's discuss test pilots of experimental and military aircraft. Yes, this occupation still exists. And no, I'm not referring to ordinary commercial pilots. I mean those who fly prototypes, aircraft that have never taken to the skies before, being tested for the first time. In the United States, a test pilot working for manufacturers like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, or NASA earns between $180,000 and $380,000 annually. The most seasoned ones, with decades of experience, can earn up to $520,000. And those involved in classified military programs? Again, the figures are confidential, but estimates suggest they can reach as high as $750,000 when accounting for all benefits and hazard bonuses. Now, you might be thinking, that doesn't sound like much compared to those other professions you mentioned. And you're right, but here's the crucial difference. These pilots are not just risking financial loss. They are gambling with their lives. The cost of a mistake is not measured solely in dollars. When a test pilot boards an experimental aircraft that has never flown before, there's a real chance that something will go wrong. The statistics are chilling. Historically, about 5% of test pilots have died in the line of duty. 5%, that's 1 in every 20. And even with all the modern technology, accidents still occur. Read about a test pilot who was evaluating a new flight control system. Something went awry at 30,000 feet. The plane entered a spin. He attempted to eject, but the ejection system failed. He lost his life. The investigation revealed that the error lay in a single line of code in the control software. One line, out of millions of lines. The cost? A human life. And the aircraft? Valued at $180 million. Completely destroyed. Yet these pilots continue to fly. Why? Because someone has to do it. Without test pilots, we wouldn't have modern aviation. We wouldn't have safe commercial airliners. We wouldn't have air defense. And the most astonishing part? Many of these pilots have told me they would do it even for less pay. Because for them, it's not just about the money. It's about being part of something greater. Pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Standing on the frontier between the known and the unknown. Now, let's talk about a profession that is growing exponentially, yet few people are aware of it. A profession where a mistake can not only cost millions but can literally alter the course of elections, destroy reputations, and shift global markets. You're halfway through the video, and I bet you're already amazed by these incredible professions. If you want to keep receiving exclusive content about salaries, careers, and the behind the scenes of the American job market, subscribe now to the channel Salary Uncovered. Activate the notification bell so you won't miss any new videos. Let's continue because the next professions are even more astonishing. I'm referring to data strategists for presidential political campaigns. These are the data scientists, analysts, and strategists who operate behind the scenes of presidential campaigns in the United States. During a presidential campaign, these professionals earn between $280,000 to $680,000 annually. The most renowned among them, those who have worked on multiple successful campaigns, can charge up to $1,200,000 per election cycle. After the election, if the candidate wins, many of these experts are hired by consulting firms for amounts reaching $2,500,000 per year. Why such high pay? Because a miscalculation in data can lead a candidate to waste millions in the wrong states. It can cause a campaign to focus on the wrong issues. It can turn a seemingly guaranteed victory into a crushing defeat. Let me give you an example. In 2016, one presidential campaign spent $40 million in a state that the data labeled as competitive. Ultimately, they lost that state by a margin of 15%. $40 million down the drain. Why? Because the data models were flawed. The assumptions were incorrect. If that $40 million had been allocated to 3 other states decided by margins of less than 1%, the election outcome might have been different. Completely different. Now, imagine the pressure of being the person responsible for these decisions. Imagine knowing that your analyses will dictate where millions of dollars are spent, that your forecasts will shape strategies influencing 330 million Americans. Spoke with someone who worked on one of those campaigns. She shared that during the last 3 months leading up to the election, she practically lived in the campaign office. She slept 4 hours a night. She analyzed millions of data points daily. She attempted to predict the behavior of millions of voters. And the responsibility, overwhelming. She told me that every time she presented an analysis to the campaign leadership, she felt a tightness in her chest. Because she knew if she was wrong, if her models were off, the candidate could lose. And if the candidate lost, the blame would fall on her. In the end, her candidate won. By a narrow margin. And her analyses were crucial. She identified 3 key counties in 2 states that no one else was paying attention to. The campaign concentrated resources there. They won those counties. And those counties decided the states. And those states decided the election. After the victory, she received offers from 7 different consulting firms. The highest offer? $1,800,000 per year. To perform the same type of analysis but for corporations. She accepted. And today she told me that even though she makes much more, the pressure is less. Because when you're analyzing data for a company to sell more products, the worst that can happen if you make a mistake is the company losing money. But in a presidential campaign, you feel like you're carrying the country's future on your shoulders. Now let's shift to a completely different realm. A domain where a mistake could cost not millions but billions, and where professionals handle substances so hazardous that a simple accident can contaminate entire regions. I'm talking about nuclear engineers who specialize in reactor design and safety. In the United States, these professionals earn between $220,000 and $480,000 annually. The most experienced ones, those working on next-generation reactor projects or at government facilities, can make between $520,000 and $920,000. And independent consultants with decades of expertise, we've seen contracts reaching up to $1,500,000 a year. Do you understand what happens when a nuclear engineer makes a mistake? Do you know the cost of a nuclear accident? Chernobyl incurred approximately $235 billion in damages and remediation. Fukushima? Estimates suggest the total cost will exceed $470 billion. $470 billion. And this isn't just about money. We're talking about areas that become uninhabitable for decades. Thousands of people developing cancer. Entire ecosystems destroyed. That's why nuclear engineers in the United States operate under extreme scrutiny. Every calculation is checked and rechecked. Every design decision goes through multiple layers of approval. Each component is tested exhaustively. Read about a nuclear engineer who identified a potential flaw in an emergency cooling system. The flaw was minor. The probability of it occurring was less than 0.001%. But if it happened, it could lead to a core meltdown. He insisted that the design be modified. The modification would cost an additional $18 million and delay the plan's completion by 8 months. He faced immense pressure to overlook the flaw. After all, the likelihood was tiny, but he stood his ground. He explained that 0.001% chance when dealing with nuclear energy is still an unacceptable risk. He presented the calculations, illustrated the scenarios, and in the end, the design was altered. That modification was never needed. The issue he anticipated never occurred. But do you know what happened at another plant in another country where an engineer didn't push for a similar change? A small leak that could have escalated into a major spill. Fortunately, it was contained in time. This is the reality for these professionals. They must consider scenarios that are unlikely to happen. But if they do, the consequences could be catastrophic. And the mental pressure? Imagine going home every day knowing that you're responsible for the safety of equipment that, if it fails, could render an entire city uninhabitable for 50 years. Imagine trying to sleep with that burden. That's why they earn well, very well, because this kind of responsibility is priceless. Man, these stories are intense, aren't they? Which of these professions impressed you the most? Or do you know of any high-risk jobs didn't mention? Share in the comments. Love reading the stories you have to tell. But not all high-risk professions involve physical or technological dangers. Some carry purely financial and legal risks. And one of the most fascinating is one you probably haven't heard of. I'm talking about merger and acquisition transaction structures for megacorporations. These are the professionals who design and execute when one company buys another for billions of dollars. At major investment banks like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan, these professionals earn between $480,000 and $1,200,000 a year. The managing directors involved in megadeals can earn between $1,800,000 and $4,500,000. And in exceptional years with bonuses from successful transactions, we've seen cases of $8 million or more. Why so much? Because when you're structuring the acquisition of a $50 billion company, every detail matters. Each clause in the contract could be worth hundreds of millions. Every tax structure can save or cost billions. Let me give you an example. A few years back, two tech giants were negotiating a merger. The transaction value? $67 billion. The structuring team worked for 11 months on the deal. They scrutinized every aspect of both companies. Every patent, every contract, every liability, every asset. Then, 3 weeks before finalizing the deal, one of the structures spotted an issue. One of the companies had a hidden licensing agreement with a third party, an agreement that hardly anyone knew existed. And that contract had a clause stating that in the event of a change of control, the licensing rights would be revoked. Do you know what that meant? It meant that one of the company's key products, which generated $12 billion in annual revenue, would lose crucial technology if the merger went through. $12 billion a year, gone. Because of a clause in a 15-year-old contract buried within thousands of pages of legal documents. Had that structure not found it, the deal would have been completed. And months later, when the clause was triggered, both companies would have lost billions. There would have been lawsuits. Shareholders would have lost fortunes. Executives would have been fired. But he found it. The team renegotiated the licensing agreement. They paid $340 million to resolve the issue. And the deal was successfully closed. That structurer received a bonus of $2.8 million that year. Because he saved the transaction. Because he averted a multi-billion-dollar disaster. But the pressure? He told me that during those 11 months, he had 3 anxiety attacks. He gained 15 pounds from stress eating. His marriage almost ended because he was working 100 hours a week. And he's not an exception. This is the reality for most professionals in this field. They sacrifice health, relationships, sleep, everything for their careers, everything for that year-end bonus that can change their lives. Now, let's talk about a category of professionals that is relatively new, yet is skyrocketing in importance and compensation. A category where a mistake can not only cost millions to the company, but can also completely destroy its public reputation. I'm referring to chief diversity officers in major corporations. Yes, you read that correctly. In the United States, a CDO at a Fortune 500 company earns between $320,000 and $780,000 a year. In massive firms like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, those figures can reach up to $1,200,000 annually. Why so much? Because in today's America, a single misstep regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion can lead to lawsuits worth hundreds of millions, boycotts that obliterate brands, and irreparable reputational damage. Let me give you a real example. A major tech company implemented a hiring policy that inadvertently discriminated against certain groups. The issue lay in how their resume screening algorithms were programmed. The outcome? A class action lawsuit for $180 million. Additionally, the company lost $2.4 billion in market value when the news broke. Major corporate clients pulled their contracts. The CEO had to testify before Congress. If that company had a skilled CDO who had reviewed the algorithms before implementation, none of this would have occurred. $180 million saved. Billions in market value preserved. Reputation intact. That's why companies are paying enormous sums for these professionals. The cost of not having someone competent in this role is simply too high. But the pressure? Imagine being the person responsible for ensuring that a company with 150,000 employees in 50 countries treats everyone fairly and equitably. Picture having to review every policy, every hiring practice, every promotion decision. And worse, imagine that no matter what you do, there will always be someone dissatisfied. There will always be criticism. There will always be those who claim you're not doing enough or that you're doing too much. Spoke with a CDO from a major media company. She told me she receives death threats regularly, that she needs personal security, that she can no longer use social media because she's constantly attacked from all sides. But she continues in her job. Why? Because she believes she's making a difference. Because she's seen real changes happen within the company. Because she knows her work, although challenging and stressful, is creating opportunities for people who previously had none. And yes, the salary of $850,000 helps. But she told me she knows people who earned as much as she does in other positions and who turned down offers to be a CDO. Because the emotional toll is too high. Because you become a constant target. Now let's talk about a profession that combines medicine, law, and absurd amounts of money. Profession where literally every word can be worth millions. I'm referring to medical experts who provide expert testimony in high-profile legal cases. These are renowned physicians hired to testify in cases of medical negligence, personal injury, and other legal disputes. In the United States, these specialists charge between $800 and $2,500 per hour. That's right, per hour. A typical case may require 200 to 500 hours of work, including document analysis, preparation, and testimony. This means that in a single case, these professionals can earn between $160,000 and $1,250,000. The most prominent, those nationally recognized in their specialties, can work on multiple cases simultaneously. Some earn $3 million or more per year just from expert testimonies, in addition to their regular medical practices. But here's the pressure. Your testimony can determine whether a patient receives $50 million in compensation or nothing at all. Can decide whether a doctor loses their license or retains their career. It can make a pharmaceutical company pay billions in punitive damages or walk away unscathed. Once watched a trial where a neurology expert was testifying. The case involved a patient who had become paralyzed after surgery. The question was whether the paralysis was caused by medical negligence or an unforeseen complication. That neurologist's testimony lasted 3 days. 3 days of detailed, technical, challenging questions. Lawyers trying to discredit every word he said. Attempting to find contradictions. Trying to make him confused. But he did not falter. He explained every aspect of the case with crystal clarity. Used models, diagrams, scientific studies. And in the end, the jury ruled in favor of the patient. $52 million in compensation. The specialist charged $1,100,000 for his work on the case. Yet, he later confided that those were the 3 most stressful days of his career. He was acutely aware that every word he uttered was under scrutiny. A single mistake, an inaccuracy, or an ambiguous statement could entirely alter the outcome of the case. There's more. After testifying in high-profile cases, these experts can become targets. We learned of instances where specialists received threats, where attempts were made to tarnish their reputations, where other doctors avoided them out of fear of being associated. It's a solitary job. You earn a substantial income, but the toll in terms of stress and professional relationships is steep. Now, if you find this content valuable, if you're learning things you never imagined about the American job market, give this video a like, and don't forget to comment on which of these professions you would find impossible to pursue. Genuinely want to know. Now, let's delve into one of the most secretive and highest paying professions in the United States. A profession where you literally cannot discuss your work. Not even with your family. Not even with your closest friends. I'm referring to intelligence analysts specializing in national security threats who work for agencies like the CIA, NSA, and other intelligence organizations. The exact figures are classified, but based on public information from government salary scales and accounts from former employees, we estimate that these professionals earn between $185,000 and $420,000 annually. Those in senior leadership positions can make up to $650,000. And when retention bonuses are included, especially for specialists in critical areas such as cybersecurity and counterterrorism, some can exceed $850,000. However, the cost of error here isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in lives, in national security, in geopolitical stability. Imagine you are an intelligence analyst receiving information about a potential terrorist threat. You must assess the source's credibility. You need to determine the urgency. You must decide if this justifies alerting authorities, mobilizing resources, and potentially disrupting travel plans for millions of Americans. If you overstate the threat, you create unnecessary panic. You waste resources. It can damage international relations if the source is discredited. If you underestimate the threat, people may die. There are no easy, correct answers. It's a judgment call, based on incomplete information, under time pressure, with potentially catastrophic consequences. Read about an analyst who identified communication patterns suggesting an imminent attack. He alerted his superiors. Measures were taken, and nothing happened. A false alarm. He faced criticism for causing unnecessary panic, for wasting resources, for disrupting operations. 6 months later, similar patterns emerged again. This time, hesitant due to past criticisms, he waited for more confirmation before alerting. And while he waited, the attack occurred. 8 people died. He carries that guilt to this day. In an anonymous interview, he told me he doesn't go a day without thinking about those 8 individuals, without wondering if they would be alive had he acted more swiftly. That is the burden these professionals bear, and they cannot even talk about it. They can't seek regular therapy because they cannot disclose work details. They can't share the stress with friends or family. They exist in a world of secrets, and they pay the psychological price for it. Yet they continue their work, because someone must do it, because they believe they are protecting the country, because despite everything, there is a sense of purpose that transcends money. Now let's discuss a profession that lies at the crossroads of medicine, technology, and billions of dollars. A profession that is literally shaping the future of human health. I'm referring to the chief scientists responsible for developing treatments for rare diseases within biotechnology companies. These professionals lead teams focused on creating therapies for conditions affecting small populations, yet lacking cures. In the United States, these scientists earn between $380,000 and $780,000 annually as a base salary. But here's where it gets intriguing. Many receive stock options that, if the drug is approved by the FDA, could be worth tens of millions of dollars. Heard about a case where a chief scientist spearheaded the development of a treatment for a rare disease impacting only 3,000 people in the Yes, he dedicated 8 years to the project. 8 years of research, trials, failures, partial successes, and more failures. The cost of development? Approximately $680 million. $680 million invested in a drug for just 3,000 individuals. If the drug had failed final testing, that $680 million would have been lost. The company would likely go under. Hundreds of employees would lose their jobs. And those 3,000 people, they would remain without treatment. The pressure on that scientist was unimaginable. Each decision he made involved millions of dollars. Every testing protocol he designed could mean the difference between success and failure. Moreover, he personally knew some of the individuals with the disease. He had attended conferences, met families. He saw children aged 7 or 8 who might not live to see their teenage years. So it was not just professional pressure. It was emotional pressure. Each failure in testing wasn't merely a scientific setback. It was the realization that those children would continue to suffer. At the end of the 8th year, the drug received FDA approval. It worked. It wasn't a cure, but it significantly improved the quality of life for patients. Some children who had been in wheelchairs were able to walk again with assistance. The stock options that scientists received soared to $34 million. He could have retired at that moment, lived comfortably for the rest of his life. But do you know what he did? He began working on another drug for a different rare disease. Why? Because he told me he couldn't live with himself knowing he could help people and chose not to. And this is the story of many professionals in these high-risk, high-reward fields. Yes, they make a lot of money, but for many, money is a consequence, not a motivation. Now let's talk about a profession that very few people know about, but that impacts practically everything you purchase. I'm referring to commodity traders specializing in energy and food markets. These professionals buy and sell oil, natural gas, wheat, soybeans, and corn on a global scale. In the United States, a senior commodity trader at companies like Cargill, Glencore, Vitol, or major banks earns between $420,000 and $2 million annually. The most successful ones, those generating consistent profits, can earn between $5 million and $5 million when including bonuses. And here's why they earn so much. A single mistake can lead to food shortages in entire countries, can cause gasoline prices to skyrocket, can destabilize economies. Let me give you an example. A few years back, a commodities trader made a significant bet on wheat. He anticipated a drought in Russia that would reduce global wheat production. So, he purchased futures contracts for wheat worth $850 million. Had he been right and the drought occurred, the price of wheat would have skyrocketed, and he would have made hundreds of millions for his firm. But he was mistaken. There was no drought. The harvest was normal. The price of wheat plummeted. The outcome? A loss of $340 million. $340 million gone. He was fired, of course. Yet, the repercussions extended beyond his company. He had influenced the markets. Businesses relying on stable wheat prices to plan their operations were impacted. Bakeries, food manufacturers all had to revise their strategies. On the flip side, there are traders who turn situations around. Heard about one trader who, during an energy crisis in California, managed to uncover supplies of natural gas that no one else knew were available. He orchestrated complex deals involving 3 different countries and delivered the gas just in time to prevent widespread blackouts. That trader earned a bonus of $4.8 million that year, because he prevented millions from losing power, because he avoided billions in economic losses. Folks, this journey through high-risk professions has been incredible, hasn't it? Share in the comments. Would you have the courage to work in any of these fields? Or do you already work in a high-pressure job? Share your experience. And if you're enjoying this, you know the drill. Subscribe to the Salary Uncovered channel and share this video with more people. Now, let's talk about one of the most controversial and high-paying professions in the United States. A profession where you literally profit from the struggles of companies. I'm referring to professional short sellers and corporate fraud detection specialists. These are the individuals who investigate companies, uncover fraud or major issues, and then bet against the stocks of those firms. It's difficult to pinpoint their earnings because many operate independently or for private hedge funds. However, based on public cases, we know that the most successful can earn between $2 million and $15 million annually. Some, in exceptional years when they uncover major frauds, can earn $50 million or more. But here's the catch. If you publicly accuse a company of fraud and you're wrong, you could be sued for defamation and market manipulation. Penalties can reach into the hundreds of millions of dollars. You could end up in prison. And more, you become a target. CEOs of the companies you investigate may hire private investigators to follow you. They might try to tarnish your reputation. They could threaten you and your family. Read about a short seller who exposed accounting fraud in a tech company. His investigation revealed the company was inflating revenues by $2.3 billion. $2.3 billion in fraud. When he published his report, the company's stock plummeted 67% in 2 days. He had bet against the company and made $87 million on that trade. But in the following months, he received daily death threats. He had to hire security 24/7. His home was vandalized. Someone attempted to hack his bank accounts. His family had to temporarily relocate. Eventually, the SEC investigated the company and confirmed the fraud. The CEO went to prison. However, that short seller told me that the months of terror he experienced hardly seemed worth the millions he earned. There are instances where they unjustly accuse a company and then face lawsuits that could ruin their careers and fortunes. It's a high-stakes job. You're literally wagering your reputation and freedom every time you make a public accusation. Yet when they are right, when they expose real frauds, they don't just earn money. They protect investors. They prevent pension funds and everyday investors from losing their savings. In a way, they act as the unofficial police of the financial market. Now, let's move to our final category of professionals. This one might be the most surprising of all. I'm referring to hostage negotiators from the FBI and private security firms. These experts are called upon when someone is kidnapped, whether in the United States or abroad. At the FBI, these individuals earn between $95,000 and $180,000 a year, depending on their experience and position. However, in the private sector, especially those working for security companies serving multinational corporations, the figures are significantly higher. Seasoned negotiators can make between $320,000 and $680,000 annually. The most renowned, those with decades of experience and proven success rates, can charge up to $1,200,000. Why such high pay in the private sector? Because when a CEO's child is kidnapped in Latin America, or when executives are taken hostage in conflict zones, companies will pay whatever it takes to secure the best negotiator available. And here's the pressure. You are literally negotiating for human lives. One mistake, one wrong word, an incorrect assessment of the kidnapper's psychology, and someone could die. Spoke with a retired hostage negotiator. He shared with me a case where an American executive was kidnapped in Mexico. The kidnappers demanded $15 million in ransom. He was hired by the company to negotiate. For 23 days, he communicated with the kidnappers. He tried to build rapport. He attempted to lower the ransom amount. He sought to buy time so authorities could locate the victim. Each conversation was a delicate dance. If he offered too much money too quickly, the kidnappers might think the victim was worth more. If he offered too little, they could kill the hostage as a demonstration. He told me he hardly slept during those 23 days. He would lie awake at night, reflecting on every word he had said, analyzing every nuance, trying to predict the kidnappers' next moves. In the end, he managed to negotiate the ransom down to $2.8 million. The family paid. The executive was released safe and sound. He received $480,000 for his efforts. But he conveyed that those were the most stressful 23 days of his life. That every time the phone rang, his heart raced. That he feared answering only to hear that the victim had been killed. And there are cases where it doesn't end well, where despite the negotiator's best efforts, the victim is killed. And then the negotiator has to grapple with that guilt, the weight of wondering if he could have done something differently. This professional told me that out of the 47 cases he handled during his career, 44 ended with the victim being safely released. 3 did not. He remembers the names of each of those 3 individuals. He says he carries their photos in his wallet, that he will never forget. So yes, he earned millions throughout his career, but he paid an emotional price that no amount of money can compensate. And this, in a way, encapsulates all the professions we've discussed today. Yes, these individuals make fortunes. Yes, their salaries seem outrageous to most of us, but they earn it because they bear burdens that most could not withstand. They make decisions that impact millions of lives, billions of dollars, and the security of entire nations. They endure constant pressure, fearful of making mistakes, aware that a minor misstep can lead to catastrophic consequences. Many sacrifice their health, relationships, and peace of mind. They work hours that would seem inhumane to most. They live in a state of constant stress. Yet, many have told me they wouldn't change their profession, because, despite everything, there's something profoundly rewarding about being at the forefront, about solving problems that no one else can tackle, about making a difference on a scale few can achieve. So, the next time you hear about someone earning millions a year, before you judge, consider what that person must do to earn that money. Think about the pressure. Think about the risk. Think about the personal cost. Because in the end, nothing in life is free. Every reward comes with a price. And the greater the reward, the higher the price typically is. These professions show us that we are willing to pay fortunes for individuals capable of bearing the burdens we cannot. Individuals who can make decisions that we wouldn't be able to. Individuals who can withstand pressures that would crush us. And perhaps, just perhaps, this reveals something significant about value, about what truly matters in the job market, about why some people earn what they do. It's not solely about technical skill, although that's important. It's not just about education, although that helps. It's about the ability to function under extreme pressure, to make critical decisions with imperfect information, to live with the consequences of those decisions. It's about mental resilience, about emotional strength, about the ability to keep going when everything inside you wants to give up. And these qualities we find are rare, very rare, and for that reason they command extraordinary salaries. So, we've reached the end of this incredible journey through the world of high-risk, high-reward professions. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these professions surprised you the most? Would you have the courage to work in any of them? Leave your comment. And if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the Salary Uncovered channel, and share this video with your friends and family. The more people who learn about these workplace realities, the better. Until the next video, and remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your career.